Hey, welcome to another edition of Labor Vision Podcast. I am your host, James Dennis, and I know you're going, wow, that's some cool new music. We got this music because we have one of our regulars from American Workers First, Mr. Charles Daniels. And just so you all know, this is going to be his theme song. So when he does his historical piece with us in the future, when you hear this, you know that it's going to be Charles coming up with some really, really great stuff. Charles, what's up, man? How you doing?
Jimmy Dennis, back in the saddle again.
It's
good to see you, my friend. Thank you for that amazing intro music. I will do my best to live up to it.
Man, look, I know you will. I know you will. Hey, Charles, just so you know, and I want to tell the audience out there, we got a surprise coming September 1st. Stay tuned. It's going to be something really, really great. You can still see us on Facebook, Labor Vision Podcast. See Labor Vision at Twitter. Charles, your handle for American Workers First is?
On Facebook, it is facebook.com/American Workers First. And on Twitter, it is USA Workers First. And you can also go to AmericanWorkersFirst.org.
And when you go to AmericanWorkersFirst.org, please go to the YouTube channel and please subscribe to that YouTube channel. He has some really good stuff. Every Friday he comes out with a labor history piece. And we're going to definitely try to push that more and more. We got to get that out to educate our people. Again, let me also say this when it comes to the election, because we do have an election this year. Just got a couple of announcements.
Yes, sir.
Everybody should vote. It's inexcusable, especially in the great state of Michigan. If you live here where we're from or anywhere, but in Michigan in particular, you can go to your clerk's office, register, fill out your ballot, and give it right back. You can do it all in one sweep. You don't have to stand in any lines. This is a very important election. As of right now, today, this is the most important election of your life as of today. After Election Day, the next one will be the most important election of your life. So, you know, that's that. And then also we got the Labor Matters, which is the video for Labor Day. We are unable to do the Labor Day parade, so we are doing a video presentation called Labor Matters. So look out for that. It's going to be some great stuff going on. Charles,
yes, sir.
What do you got for us today? What's going on, man?
I'm here because I am mad, Jimmy. I am mad about something.
He's mad, so hold on.
Yes, hit my mad music. Thank you. For those at home, I'm making my mad face right now. And I'm mad because there's a piece of legislation that just came out. It was introduced by the Senate GOP on July 27th, and it's called the HEALS Act. And the HEALS Act, and it's the response to the House-passed HEROES Act that came out in May, right? They passed it in May, and now the Senate has introduced their own legislation. They said, we don't want the HEROES Act. We're going to do our own thing. Don't worry about it. We're going to handle it. And the HEALS Act stands for the Health, Economic Assistance, Liability Protection, and Schools Act.
Oh, wait. Okay, so hold on, back up. Let's get some clarity. So can we go back to the HEROES Act just real briefly? So the HEROES Act did not pass.
It passed the House, which then sends it over to the Senate, and then the Senate would take it up and vote on it. And if it was passed again, it would go to the president's desk, and he would sign it, and then it would become a law.
Right, but it didn't pass the Senate.
It did not. It was not even introduced. It was not heard. Mitch McConnell, who is in charge of the Senate, you know, he's the head guy over there. He decides what is and is not voted on. So it was not voted on, so it had no opportunity to pass.
Okay, so it was never introduced. Let's be real clear about that. The HEROES Act was never introduced. And the HEROES Act, just briefly, what was in the HEROES Act? Just real brief for those that don't know.
Wow, being super brief. So the HEROES Act is 1,815 pages. So it's difficult to be brief on. It is a $3 trillion stimulus package.
Okay, stimulus package. Okay, that's cool.
It is huge, but yes, it's a stimulus package for the COVID-19 pandemic to try to deal with all of the things that the entire country is dealing with, which is why it's so all-encompassing. And the HEROES Act actually stands for Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act.
Wow, I didn't expect that. I was just going for the stimulus pack, but okay.
All these things have to have crazy acronyms associated with them, but yes, both of them actually stand for something. And in theory, they stand for something. But it's challenging on some of these because you just get bullet points. It's impossible to read an 1,815-page act. It's not like you're reading some Stephen King novel either that's actually engaging. This is as dry possibly gets. This is legalese. It's if to and then kind of stuff. It's extremely challenging. And just on an off-topic note, no bill should be that big because when you do that, they become so bloated that you can pick and choose which pieces you want to support, and it gives you a reason not to support the entire bill. So you might agree with 99% of it, but because there's that one thing in there, because your party says we're not going to agree with this, you can use that as a catalyst, as a reason, as an excuse for not vote for something that you know that will help the majority of the people, and that's wrong.
And you know what? From what I was hearing from the HEROES Act, the stimulus part was the biggest part that everybody was really going. But here's the thing: they're responding to that, and that's the reason why we were talking about the HEROES Act, so everybody kind of got a somewhat of an idea. This new act, the HEALS Act,
yes. So the HEALS Act, what I really wanted to talk about was something that's associated with it that's in the HEALS Act, which is the Safe to Work Act. And what that is, it's another acronym. It's safeguarding America's frontline employees to offer work opportunities to kickstart the economy. Trying to get this stuff out is challenging. But,
okay, so it sounds good so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, from the way you named it, the way you said it, it's sort of like right to work sounds good. Everybody has a right to work, yes, but it really isn't the right to work.
It's all about branding, right?
Yeah,
it's all
branding.
about it's putting a pretty name on something so that people don't actually look into what it is. But you don't judge a book by its cover, and the devil's in the details, and you really need to dig into this. And with the Safe to Work Act, the primary thing that talks about is just limiting liability for corporations when it comes to their safety precautions for COVID-19 and their employees. So the employees are being made less safe based on this because it's taking away the responsibility of these corporations to keep them out of harm's way.
Wow.
There's no other way to state it and to put it that this act right here, if passed, will harm over 150 million American workers. It will make them less safe.
So you're saying it's limit the liabilities of the corporations.
That is correct. Yes.
It's less painful if they don't do something correctly.
There's so many different elements to this, but luckily this isn't a 1,000-page act. This is 65 pages, and while that still is a lot, you can break it down. And normally, if you're trying to have a lawsuits against corporations, in general, you have to prove beyond a preponderance of the evidence that they're culpable for what they did, that they're responsible. The Safe to Work Act changes that, where you have to prove gross negligence. You have to prove willful misconduct. You have to prove that they did it intentionally. You have to prove that they were so inept at keeping you safe that they're responsible, and that's wrong. You're making it harder for employees to demand safe working conditions from their employers during a pandemic. Yeah,
and this is nothing normal. None of us has ever been through this. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what can we do? What can we do as individuals? Should we write, call, email, jump up and down, protest?
The first thing that we need to do is we need to start talking about it. Before we started this podcast, I went on YouTube and I searched for the Safe to Work Act, and there are 0 results for it. Not one. No one is talking about the HEALS Act with the Safe to Work Act included, and instead they're talking about the fighter jets, the billions for that. They're talking about the billions for the federal building. And yes, that's bloat, and it doesn't deserve to be in this bill, and it doesn't belong. But the more harmful thing, the more insidious piece of this act is what it's doing for workers. And let's flesh that out a little bit. With these corporations, it changes the amount that workers can sue for as well. They can't sue for punitive damages. They can only sue for actual damages. So how much have I lost working there? But it doesn't take into the fact, well, maybe I lost my house. Maybe the pain and suffering associated with this. Maybe my wife had to change her job. Maybe my kids suffered in some way.
Right.
So the punitive element is taken out of that. It also supersedes OSHA, FLSA, ADA, all of those safeguards that have been put in place for decades, for generations to keep workers safe, things that workers have already fought and died for to make them more safe. It supersedes those. It does away with them.
So you brought up two points that I kind of want to flush out just a little bit because I need people to really get this. So I'm a regular worker. Let's say I work in a grocery store. And something happens where I end up suing the grocery store or the corporation because I've lost my job or whatever, and I ended up winning. So even though it took 6 months for this to go, and usually it's more than 6 months, so I'm really just compacting this. Even though it took 6 months of pain and suffering, losing the job, not having any income, maybe possibly having to try to get another job, or maybe even being injured where you cannot go get another job. So you got all this stuff that's happening in your life that's just getting torn up to pieces. The only thing they can say is, well, you know what? You were making $5 an hour, and I'm just using that as an example. And we look at it, they owe you $1,000 for 6 months. And it's like you really lost more than $1,000 for 6 months, because when you sit back and look at all the pain and suffering, for lack of a better word, the stuff that went along with you losing your job, it wasn't just $1,000. You know, that money was coming in to pay bills that needed to be paid. And keep in mind, in 6 months, it takes 3 months to repossess a car. It takes 3 months to start foreclosure. It takes 3 months to, you know, for all this other stuff to happen, right? So all this stuff is happening. Your bank fees is piling up. You can't even get your bank fees because of your checks bouncing, because you didn't have the money in the bank because they took your job from you. You cannot sue for any of that.
You can only sue for actual damage. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? You're not a lawyer. It's not my intention to try to give legal advice on this.
Right,
but from how I've read it and from the interpretations that I've read online, which there are a couple, they're not a lot, but there are a couple, the damages are limited to your actual damages. Now, the kicker to this being, the really nasty piece of this being that when you instigate that litigation against a corporation, in this act, it actually opens you up for the company to sue you.
A countersuit. That
is correct.
So now I'm opened up for a countersuit.
Yes, there's certain parameters that would have to be enacted, but the company can then sue you. And guess what? When they sue you, they can seek punitive damages. They're not limited to actual damages.
So let me get this straight. The common person can only get actual damages. The corporation can sue for whatever they think they done lost, or, you know, however they done been harmed, pain and suffering, basically. Like a corporation go through pain and suffering.
Correct. Yes. I mean, this is another one of those corporations or people kind of thing. But yes, and that's the point, is that there are a lot of things going on right now, but this piece of legislation, if passed,
it's horrible.
It's bad for over 150 million American workers. It would impact all of them in a negative way. It would make them less safe. If all these companies essentially would have to do is just post a policy as to what their COVID-19 safety protocol is. And if that's even just the CDC guidelines, well, then you've satisfied the needs of this act in order to cover yourself legally. And if that's all you need to do, if you're just window dressing your safety, you're making people less safe. There's already laws in place. OSHA's been in active for what, 1970 is when it came in. So it works. There's safety procedures that are already there. And what they're doing here is they're removing those. They're peeling those back, things that have been earned and gained over lifetimes of struggle. They're using a pandemic as an opportunity to make workers less safe and to implement legislation that harms American workers. And that's wrong.
To create a loophole. So let's go back to your second point of OSHA being pretty much deveined, or the clause pulled out of them.
This act was superseded.
Yeah.
You would look to this act first.
And keep in mind, OSHA had, and being a union rep, I have been involved in some OSHA situations where OSHA has come through and the company has ruled one way, and OSHA has came back and says, no, that's supposed to be like this. And they were the ones that straightened everything up. Yes. So you're saying in this case, if the company decides, hey, no, we're good on this, and OSHA comes in and says, no, we see something wrong, the company can, according to this, the company would still be right.
As long as you're compliant with this act, you're compliant with federal law. If enacted, this would become federal law, and the language of the act says that it supersedes all other state and federal guidelines. That's what it says. And the level that you have to prove in this, it says you have to go back 14 days and you have to list every single person that you've come in contact with, all of the places that you've been, and you have to be able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that none of those people could have gotten you sick, that no one at those places could have gotten you sick. It's a level of proof that's almost impossible for someone to overcome. So that gives a corporation just carte blanche to not care about their safety protocols.
Yeah, but even right today, somebody could be carrying the virus and not even know. So that's,
how could you know?
Exactly.
It's impossible, but you have to be able to prove that without a shadow of a doubt, not preponderance of evidence. It has to be gross negligence or willful misconduct, and it has to meet all of these parameters for you to be able to be successful in your litigation. And if you're not successful in your litigation, it's possible for that corporation to sue you for your litigation.
Because you done drugged them through the courts. Now they're going to sue you for their pain and suffering.
And why did they do that, Jimmy? It's not because they actually intend to sue you. It's because they're trying to scare you into not suing them. They're trying to put as many roadblocks and hurdles and obstacles in your way to stop you from pursuing safer working conditions.
Yep.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that is very, very wrong. And you said no YouTube videos, nothing, right? As of right now, as of today,
it's crickets. There's a couple articles that are out there. I haven't seen any YouTube videos though, but people aren't talking about that. They're talking about the fighter jets. They're talking about the fact that the Senate has now left, and they're not talking about what's going on. But Mitch McConnell has come out and said that this is the centerpiece to his piece of legislation. It is the most important thing to them because they believe that in order for the country to open up and to go back to the way that things were, where they could work, that corporations need this kind of protection.
So, Charles, I'm going to jump off the subject matter just a tad bit, and then we can jump back on the trail. So, you've heard of the trickle-down effect?
Sure.
Well, you give the corporations breaks, and then they create jobs.
Yeah, the fallacy, sure.
Okay, so bear with me on this one. And it's just something that I came up with. Aren't we, the people, the reason why businesses thrive? Because if I don't go in and I don't buy those shoes or that computer or that article of clothing, that company doesn't make any money and they can't hire people. So if you really think about the trickle-down effect, shouldn't the trickle-down effect be more geared towards us as individuals, as consumers, because we kind of make the world go around by spending our money?
Governments are instituted amongst men deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. Governments are supposed to be there to serve the will of the people. That's the purpose of government, to help the people.
So the biggest tax break that I get, and I'm just using me as an example, I'm more amped to go out and spend money.
Yes,
whereas with a corporation, they've been getting tax breaks and they're buying more stock.
They buy their own stock. They can offshore that money. They can put it in tax havens where they don't have to.
So it doesn't get back into. So really, the trickle down effect thing is really not. Yeah,
they're dragons hoarding their money in some cave somewhere, and they're protecting it, and they're building an amount of wealth that you couldn't spend in 1,000 lifetimes. Meanwhile, the people are struggling.
And back to this act really is going to let the people struggle because somebody gets sick, even at work, because of somebody at work that had the virus, didn't know they had it, got the person sick because their immune system isn't up to specs, and now they're out. And this act is going to protect the corporation from that event.
100%. That is without question the intent of this act, and it makes it harder for workers to pursue safer working conditions. And when you do that, those people are going to suffer. People are going to get hurt. People are going to die. That's just the facts. You're going to make people less safe.
And it's amazing, Charles, that I have talked to people that still believe this is a hoax.
As of today, I think 167,000 people have
Yep, I realize that.
Hundreds of countries have been impacted by it. If it's a hoax, it's the greatest hoax ever implemented in the history of time, and it was done across the world. And I mean, these are countries that don't get along, that can't fix their own simple problems, and you think that they've all come together to create some giant Illuminati sort of thing to oversee exactly how things are doing. And then you have countries that are doing better and countries are doing worse. Like, how did they figure that out? How did they figure it out that Germany gets to say that they're doing good with this virus, but Brazil has to pretend like they're doing bad? How come the United States has to have the highest death rate? Why did they decide on that? How come South Korea gets to be doing good? It doesn't make any sense. It's an argument that falls apart immediately when you put it under the microscope.
And it's funny because the people that I've talked to that said it's a hoax, it's because they know no one that has contacted this virus, and they're saying it's just like the flu. And it was funny because I sat down and talked to the one person. I said, you realize I know over 20 people that's died of this. And it goes, well, they probably were all African Americans. No, they weren't. They were not. They were not. I know a whole lot of different races that I can tell you that got really sick, died, whatever. I don't know. It lets me know that is their perception. And going back to Mitch McConnell, his perception kind of goes hand in hand with theirs. That's the reason why he's picking and choosing which bills hit the table. The HEROES Act didn't hit the table. But the HEROES Act is hitting the table.
And let's talk about the HEROES Act because we're talking about workers right now, right? The HEROES Act sets aside $200 billion for essential workers for hazard pay, premium pay, and it's retroactive all the way back to January for those workers. So the grocery store workers that were out there, just anyone, the bankers that were out there, the police, firemen, the electrical workers, the phone workers that were all out there keeping the healthcare workers, all the people that were out there.
The doctors and nurses, keeping
the country,
the orderlies.
Keeping the country running during this pandemic. they've actually got some tangible results from this act. Do you know what the HEALS Act gives them? Absolutely nothing. A meaningless thank you to them. Thank you for all your hard work. See you later. Good luck out there with everything. But the HEROES Act, let me read to you. This is from the HEROES Act, and it's going to talk about the workers that it would help. And these would be the people that would be eligible for up to $10,000, depending on how much they earn, retroactive for hazard pay for working.
Okay. And remember, $10,000 is a lot of money, but it's not. Let's be clear about that. That's no one's going to go and retire and move to an island with $10,000.
No, they're going to be able to pay for some of the things that they probably lost by having to work through this pandemic and the safety procedures and protocols and parameters that they had to put into themselves personally to deal with the fact that they were working. But here's the list that's spelled out. Important stuff. Doctors, nurses, and other frontline medical personnel such as nurse aides and assistants, infection control, laboratory personnel, direct care and home care workers, those who work in nursing homes with elderly or disabled, including home health providers, biomedical workers, infectious disease researchers and scientists, maintenance workers, janitors, housekeepers, sanitarians, sanitation and pest control workers who support food manufacturing processes, mortuary professionals, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, social workers, and others who must be on the front lines to work with abused and neglected individuals, grocery clerks, retail workers, food, beverage, other critical products to humans and animals, restaurant workers, food manufacturers and suppliers, agriculture, seafood and meat harvesters, producers, postal workers and other transportation delivery workers, childcare workers, cafeteria workers, and others who must necessarily support the ability of other essential workers to be able to work. That's what it looks like when you're taking care of the people.
Right.
The HEALS Act doesn't do anything for any of those workers. Do you know what it does? It takes away the safety that those workers had. It endangers all of them. That's what it does.
Okay. Yep. So everyone out there, you heard this. Research it for yourself. Charles, are you going to do anything on America Workers First about this?
We have. We put out some content pertaining to it. And
we've
also got a little page that actually goes through a blog post that talks about the specific language in the act and then talks about what that language might mean. And it has a link where you can download it as well. So I'll shoot that over to you. And if you can include it with the share, people can go there if they want to read the act for themselves, which is what you should do. You should get out there and educate yourself on all of this. Jimmy was talking about the election that's coming up. Do you know who paid for that?
Who?
You did. You paid for that. You're paying for this election. Get out there and get your money's worth.
Yeah,
get your money's worth out of your government.
Yeah, and we're not going for postponing this. That's not an option.
We've gone through civil wars, we've gone through world wars, and we've been able to vote. We can do it safely. There's ways that it can be done.
Absolutely,
it's at the heart of American democracy. We vote.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Charles. This is wow. I cannot. And I guess the thing that's really amazing me, and I got to keep pushing this envelope, is one man decides what bills hit the table and what doesn't. That's something that we got to look at as well. You got a HEROES Act that's decent, and then you got the HEALS Act that's not decent. He's like, hey, I'm going to take this one, and our representatives don't have a choice.
It's probably a fundamental flaw in our American democracy. When they were making the Constitution, I don't think they envisioned the level of partisan politics that we have right now. I mean, Madison in the Federalist Papers talked about it, and he talked about factions and how important those were going to play, because when you had multiple factions, it would keep people honest because you'd have these groups that would go against one another.
Right.
But I don't think he envisioned where it would come just one team against the other and all the other things did not matter. There's a reason why Mitch McConnell isn't introducing that legislation, because it would get voted down. He has no doubt in his mind it would get voted down because they would vote against party lines, and right now the Republicans control the Senate.
Right.
They just do. He's not introducing it because he doesn't want people to have to be on the record as voting against something that their constituents might want, and that's wrong.
And you know what? Let me say this to the audience, because you just gave me the lead in, so thank you for this. Some of our audience are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are independent, some are the Green parties, and I'm just naming those four. It's probably more parties out there. I'm not excluding you, but I'm talking about everybody at this point. Here's the thing: it doesn't matter what party you're with. At the end of the day, that person represents you. So if it's a bill that benefits you, you need to get on the phone, you need to get on the email, and you need to contact that representative. They are not up there to be friends with other Republicans, with other Democrats, with other Green parties, with other independents. That's not their job. Their job isn't to sit there and go, well, I got to vote with my party. No, you are supposed to vote with us, the people. So if it's something that we need, you should be passing it, even if the rest of the Democrats is voting against it, even if the rest of the Republicans are voting against it, if the rest of the independents is voting against it. If everyone else is voting against it, if it's going to benefit me, Heroes Act is what I'm really referring to at this point in time. It shouldn't go down Republican lines of no. It should hit the table, and you, being the person that voted for that Republican, should be contacting them going, hey, check this out. Here's what I need you to do because I need that money because I'm not working due to X, Y, and Z, or whatever the reason may be. You need to hold that person responsible. And then at the end of the day, if that person is not going to vote the way you want them to vote, and you're a Republican, and I'm just using that as an example, go find you another Republican to vote for. Yes. That person should not be there anymore, because if they're just voting down party lines, that is absolutely 100% wrong. And even with the Democrats, I'm going to say that too. If it was a Democratic Party person and you're supporting them and they voted against all of the things that you want, you need to say, hey, you know what? You will not get my vote. I will find another Democrat to take your place. You are out of here. That is what this country needs to do. We got to stop being, we're standing by the party lines. The heck with the party lines. It is about what is in the best interest, in your best interest. That's what it is. Your family, your friends, your livelihood. Because if they put a bunch of laws up there that's geared against you, you are going to fail miserably after they're passed. Point blank. Period. And you can be a long, staunch Democrat. You can be a long, staunch Republican. You can be a long, staunch Green person. You can be a long, staunch independent. You are going to lose. That's the problem I got, Charles, is we the people, some of us do it. Some of us are writing and calling. But most of us, it's like, well, I'm going to just stand by. No, they don't tell you what to do. You tell them what to do. Yes. You vote them in. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting up here telling, and they're getting ready to take the safe. And keep in mind, what you're talking about with this bill, some of those people, some of those folks are Republicans. A lot of those folks are Republicans. It may be most of them are Republicans. And that bill is going against them. It is literally punching them in the throat real hard. And just because it's Republicans who are saying, hey, we're going to not stand for this, they need a phone call to say, hey, I need you to vote for this. I need you to not vote this down. In this case, this should be voted down.
And sunlight is the best disinfectant. What needs to happen is we need to start talking about this and educating and put it out there and sharing. And instead of just being online saying nasty things about Joe Biden or nasty things about Donald Trump, instead, talk about the things that are germane to all of us, the things that we all agree on. We have to stop just focusing on the things that we disagree with, because that's fine. It's fine to have disagreements, but if you can't even agree on the things that you agree on, well, then you're just arguing to argue. This is something that's bad for all American workers, all over 150 million of them. If we stood up together, united, and said, regardless of party lines, this doesn't fly with us. They would change it tomorrow, because they know the people that did support this would be voted out, and that's all that they care about, is maintaining that level of power. You're the ones that give them that power. You might think that you're on their team, but they're not on your team.
I think you said it well, Charles. Well, how can our podcasters get in touch with you, man?
You can find me on American Workers First on Facebook. If you just search for it, AmericanWorkersFirst.org, check that out and send us a message. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please check out the YouTube channel. We try to put out as much content as we can, and it's with the idea that there are certain things that we disagree on, and that's great. That's wonderful. That's what America is built on, the foundation of having differences, different people coming together for the common good. But there's things that we should all agree with. Things like federal contracts. If you don't think that our federal contracts should go to corporations that are outsourcing American jobs and eliminating those American jobs,
that's a good point.
Guess what?
That's a really good point.
If we all agree with that, well, we could stop it tomorrow, but we only do that when we empower ourselves by coming together.
Yep.
This is about coming together. Come, let us reason together.
That's right. I agree with you. All right. I guess that is our show for today. And Charles, the music is coming on.
Hit my theme music. Hey, thanks for having me, Jenny. I had a blast.
Hey, you know what? Thanks for being on the show. And hey, thanks to everybody for listening to the Labor Vision Podcast. We will see you next time. I'm your host, James Dennis, and peace out.